Hey guys, today we're in the book of 1 Kings chapter 11. Now Solomon has been doing well. He's been growing the kingdom. All of the world has been coming to him, but today we see his downfall. And his downfall, like many kings that will come, will be because of women. Now, King Solomon loved many foreign women. It says daughters, along with the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabite, Amorite, Edomite, Sidonian, Hittite, and other nations around the world. If you remember back in our reading, when they invaded, when Israel came into the promised land, God gave them one command, and that was to get rid of all of the other nations. Now here we have Solomon, the wisest, the richest, the greatest king of Israel thus far, is now not getting rid of them, but he's bringing them in. He's marrying their women, and they are making them princesses. So as he's bringing in these women, of course, they're going to want their own gods, their own worship. And so Solomon, being a husband, being a man, wanting to please women, what happens? He starts to bring in other idols, temples, things of that nature. And that will be his ultimate downfall. We see that in verse 2, you shall not enter into marriage with them, that they will turn away your heart after their gods. And Solomon clung to these in love. Solomon wanted lust and romance and love more than God. And we see that he had 700 wives who were princesses, as well as 300 concubines or mistresses or sex slaves. So he had over 1,000 women. No man can please 1,000 women emotionally, spiritually, physically. So you can imagine the chaos that he has made for himself. The wives turned his heart. We see in verse 3, and when Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods. Notice in our mind, we think the older we get, the wiser we get. And that's normally true, right? We learn more things, and we've learned through our youthfulness how things should be. The wisest man to ever walk the earth was King Solomon, because he was given godly wisdom. But notice as he gets older, he becomes less wise, not more wise. He was more wise when he was younger because he was walking close with the Lord. Proverbs tells us that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. At the beginning, at his youthfulness, he feared the Lord. Towards the end, he did not fear the Lord, and that's when he became less wise in the eyes of God. Maybe not to men, maybe not to these princesses, maybe not to the world, but definitely to God. So as he's getting older, he's becoming less wise, and we see that he begins to build temples to Ashtoreth, to Malcham, to Chemosh, to Molech. These are all huge gods of Canaanite, Amorite, Edomite, Moabite gods, and he was building temples. So his women wanted things, and Solomon built whatever his woman wanted. He wanted to please them, and so he did so. But through that, not only did he turn his heart away from God, but he would have turned Israel's heart as well. You would have to imagine an Israelite as they see their king Solomon, as he's building these big humongous temples and poles and idols, and celebrating in these pagan worship rituals. Israelites would have followed their king. This is Solomon. God has blessed him, and he has been their king, so Israelites would have definitely followed him. And because of this, verse 9, the Lord was angry. Because why? Because 1 Kings chapter 2, God appeared to him and said, as long as you love me with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength, you walk after me, you follow my commandments, you walk with me daily, I will bless the socks off of you. But if you do not, I will destroy you. And that's exactly what God will do. He says, I will surely tear your kingdom apart from you, and I will give it to your servant. I will give it to someone who serves you, right? Not his son, a servant. And this is a prophetic statement, as we will find out by the end of the chapter. He says, I will tear it out of the hand of your son. And you'd imagine, as a dad, you want your son to have the best. And so here, he's not going to tear it out of the hand of Solomon, but he will tear it out of the next generation. Sometimes the consequences of our sin last longer than our lives. The consequences of sin sometimes is paid by our children and our great-grandchildren. And this is exactly what happens. But he tells them some prophetic things that we will see to come true. He says, I will not tear away all of the kingdom, but I will give you one tribe to your son for the sake of David, my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem that I have chose. You will see for the rest of Kings, the rest of Chronicles, this language of one tribe. And then at times there will be two tribes. You'll see this later on in this chapter. What you need to understand is it's technically two tribes. It's the tribe of Judah and Benjamin. These are the two most southern regions. Judah contains Jerusalem. Benjamin controls the southern part of the desert. Benjamin is very small by amount of people, and they get absorbed into Judah. And so what we see here is the beginning of what the rest of the Old Testament will talk about, that Israel is going to be torn apart into two sections. The northern kingdom, which is 10 tribes, and the southern kingdom, which is 2 tribes. The northern kingdom will remain the name of Israel. The southern kingdom, Judah and Benjamin, the son of Solomon will reign over for a little bit. This will begin the name of Judah. They will take on the name of their tribe, and they will absorb in Benjamin because there's not that many people left. It's out in the desert. It's a terrible place to live. And so you have Israel, the 10, and you have Judah, which is technically 2, Judah and Benjamin. But this is all prophetic. This is all God telling Solomon, this is exactly what I'm going to do. And then we see God allows adversaries. We've seen earlier where it says that as Solomon began to grow, he had no Satans or had no adversaries. Well, here we see 3 adversaries. God puts in his life 3 adversaries because he is not following the commandment of God. 1, he sends Hadad the Edomite. This is from the south. This is an enemy of the southeast of Israel, from the country of Edom. But then also he sends another adversary, Rezin or Rezon, of the north of Damascus, or what we would call today Syria. So now there's an enemy to the south, there's an enemy to a north, and now for the first time in all of Solomon's reign, the world is not liking him, and the world is closing in on him from the south and the north. Lastly, the third adversary is a guy named Jeroboam. Jeroboam will be an important figure for the rest of Kings in Chronicles. It will set a dynasty of kings in motion. You have Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, an Ephraimite, which means he is an Israelite. All right, so there's 3 adversaries, right? There's Hadad, he's an Edomite. You have Rezon, which is somebody from Syria, a Syrian. He is outside of Israel. But you have Jeroboam, who is an Israelite himself. And he was a servant to the king because he was smart. He knew how to command people. And we see in verse 28 that Solomon put him in charge over the forced labor of the tribe of Joseph. Solomon, when he was building all of these buildings and all of these things around the kingdom of Israel in this golden age of Israel, he enslaved Israelites. he became like a new Pharaoh, which should start to tell you why he did not do well, right? God does not do well with pharaohs. God is in charge, not the king. But Solomon put Jeroboam in charge of basically the Israelite forced labor. The name of Jeroboam means well in the eyes of people. And so probably he was loved among these slave labor, and everybody loved him, though he was in charge, and he was probably looked as a leader, and easy to move Israelites away from Solomon. And so this is that servant that God prophesied. And then he goes to this prophet named Achiah. Achiah says, here's the deal. God's going to give the kingdom away from Solomon. And he takes his robe, he tears it into 12 places, and he tells Jeroboam, you may have 10 pieces, prophetically speaking, of exactly what God is telling Solomon, that 10 of the tribes are going to be ripped away from the son of Solomon, from Rehoboam. And so here we find out that Jeroboam is going to be this new leader. He's 10 places. And we see in verse 33, why is all this happening? Because Solomon has forsaken him. He has not walked in his ways, and that Jeroboam will be the leader of the 10 tribes, this northern kingdom, the part of Israel. But notice what happens in verse 38. He says, God tells Jeroboam, this adversary of Solomon, he says, I will be with you and I will build you a sure house. God is telling now this adversary, Jeroboam, that he is going to give him a lasting dynasty. And remember, this is a promise that God made to David, right? That was over all of Israel, but now Israel is about to be separated. And so David will have heirs that sit on the throne, but it will be of the southern kingdom, which will be of Judah and Benjamin. But now Jeroboam is going to have a lasting dynasty over the northern kingdom. Notice it says a lasting dynasty. It doesn't mean forever, okay? But there is going to be a long reign of kings that come from Jeroboam. So in your mind, the northern kingdoms will come from Jeroboam, and the southern kingdom, Judah and Benjamin, will come from Rehoboam. Rehoboam is the son of Solomon. Jeroboam is a servant of Solomon. And so God is still keeping all of his promises. No promise has happened, is broken. But we can see this beginning of this break that we read about in most of the Old Testament. Verse 40, it says, Solomon sought, therefore, to kill Jeroboam. And you can understand, the Lord said, hey, I'm going to give this is your new enemy. Solomon sought to kill him. But Jeroboam rose and fled into Egypt to Shishak, the king of Egypt, and was in Egypt until the death of Solomon. Now, a brief moment about Shishak. We will see Shishak again, but a couple things about Shishak. Shishak is the first Pharaoh that is mentioned in all of the Bible by name. Okay, up until this point, the Pharaoh of Egypt has always been known as Pharaoh. But it's now in 1 Kings chapter 11, we see the first visible name of a Pharaoh, Shishak. There is a Shishak Pharaoh in Egyptian history. So we know exactly when this happens. And Shishak will later come up and he will destroy the southern kingdom. He will go against Rehoboam and he will destroy that to help out Jeroboam of the northern kingdom. So Jeroboam goes south. He makes friends with Shishak. Later on, he's going to come back to reign in the north. And when he comes to reign in the north, his friend Shishak is going to come up and raid the south and destroy the temple. And I'm going to put a picture right here in the temple of of Karnak in Luxor when we were just there last year. I have pictures of engraved history on the side of a temple about Shishak and how he went in and destroyed the southern part of Israel. So I'm going to put a picture right here, right now. You won't read it because it's kind of hieroglyphics, but it's just interesting on, once again, how Egyptian history and world history lines up with biblical history. And so it's just an amazing part of proving the Bible is true. We'll talk more about Shishak in a little bit later in the next book. But now we see the rest of the Acts. Solomon we don't have because it's not important. Solomon dies. He dies after 40 years of being king. Most people will put Solomon starting his reign at 20, so he died when he was 60, pretty young to be a king, just showing us that when a man goes against God, he does not live very long. And we see that his son Rehoboam reigned in his place afterwards. So after he dies, Rehoboam is the leader of basically all of Israel for a short amount of time, and then Jeroboam will come back. He will take the northern part. So Jeroboam in the north, Rehoboam in the south. I know they sound very similar. It is what it is. And then the kingdom will be split, and we will get into that in the next couple chapters. Hope that makes a little bit more sense. And we'll see you tomorrow in chapter 12. God bless.